from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy Friday. Welcome to the program. Our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez, if you want to chime in. And lots going on, right? There's a bunch of news. There was some news about Fani Willis. Fani Willis, the district attorney of Georgia. She was embroiled, obviously, in these allegations of plagiarism and inappropriate relationships with her lead prosecutor, who turned out to be her lover. And lots of things were discussed. She was actually paying this guy to go on vacation with her. Not a bad gig, right? If you want to go on vacations with Fani Willis and get paid for it. It's like a part-time job. And she was paying him in cash. She made this whole big deal about, we only did with cash. And she brought her dad in, which I thought was the craziest thing. Imagine getting in trouble and you're like, you know what? I'm going to call my dad as a witness. My dad's going to tell you that I love to use cash. I hate using credit cards. I don't use Zelle. I don't use checks. We use cash around here because my dad taught me how to use cash. Listen, my dad always told me cash money, cash money. He loved cash money. But I can tell you that I don't think I would ever think of calling my dad to the stand. Now, obviously, he's, dearly departed. But I wouldn't think of saying, Your Honor, I want to bring a witness. Yes, I'm calling my dad. My dad's going to tell you that he taught me about cash money. Come on. But anyway, that's all just part of what Fani Willis did in this crazy trial. And the judge now says, Fani Willis, either you go or your boyfriend goes, but you both can't stay. And shortly after that, Nathan Wade issued his letter of resignation so that Fani Willis could remain on the job. The problem is, I think, in my thinking, that she's kind of overplayed her hand here. I don't know that she really is taken seriously. I don't think that she's very credible in the courtroom. I don't think that her colleagues and peers in the world of lawyering take her seriously anymore, if they ever did, because I think she's kind of exposed herself as a fake, phony fraud, a fake, phony funny fraud, right? I should say she's a fake funny fraud. Fani Willis. Anyway, the news is that Nathan Wade is out and Fani Willis is back in, and I guess she's going to appoint somebody else, and likely she's going to take this one on the chin, right? I think she's going to take an L here, but we'll see. I mean, she's going to try and go for the gold. Her job is to make a show, right? Not to get the conviction, but to make a show. It was always about making a show. It was always about being able to go on TV and create a soundbite and say, Donald Trump is a criminal. Donald Trump has been charged with RICO. Donald Trump has been this and Donald Trump has been that. That's always been her job. We'll see if she is effective in doing so. Now, switch it over to New York. In New York, a judge delayed the Trump hush money trial, which is interesting. And the Supreme Court also ruled that the public can sue officials who block them on social media. Now, that alone made me want to go on and troll Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, all out crazy, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens. But I'm not going to troll her. She gets trolled enough, right? Even by her own peoples, right? She gets trolled by the left. La pobrecita, poor thing. Anyway, that was one of the developments coming out of the Supreme Court today. So, lots going on now. Tonight, we're going to talk about the cultural attack that remains on our young people, Generation Z, Generation X, but mainly Generation Z, I think, is the one that's really getting the onslaught of it. Gen X is probably set in their ways. Millennials, they're probably in between, right? They have some of them have children already, so they have some of their own ideas that they're kind of set in their ways, but many of them are ultra feminist and have bought into other ideas that were, being peddled at the time. And we're going to talk about that and this just onslaught that just seems to not end to try and change culture. I also want to get into the nuts and bolts of what people deal with when they're out at sea, right? When they're on like a nuclear submarine, for example. I think that's an important thing to talk about, being that we've got so many people out there doing that. And I've never spoken with somebody that's done that, so we're going to do a little bit of that. Plus, Open Phone America is coming up in the third hour, and I want to talk to you then. And of course, throughout the evening, if you have any comments that you want to chime in on regarding the topics we're discussing, I encourage you to do that. Now, there was a article I wanted to share with you on immigration. I'm not going to do a ton of immigration tonight, but we always do touch on it a little bit. Biden administration deports 0.25% of illegal Venezuelans who've entered the United States. Isn't that something? So not even 1% of the Venezuelans that have entered the country. Now you're thinking, Rich, what do you have against Venezuelans? Nothing. I actually have some Venezuelan friends. I love them. They're fantastic. The problem is that we know that many of them are affiliated with this gang, Tren de Aragua, right? And these people are pretty vicious, state-funded gangsters from Venezuela. So why is it that we've only deported, only 0.25%? Well, I guess the vast ineptitude that's displayed by Joel Baboso Biden, that's part of it. But I think there's more to it. I think it's, I don't know, I guess to sound crazy and maybe potentially risk losing any credibility I might have, I'm going to say maybe it's an inside job. Maybe those that are in government today, maybe the folks in Washington don't want people to have the ability to leave this country. They just want them to have the ability to come in. And that's why they don't want to deport anybody. And they don't want to make it easy to deport people. They want to make it easy to get in. Maybe. That's a possibility. Now, I also wanted to bring to your attention that the Pentagon is now paying a Chinese Communist Party linked venture capital firm for tutoring services. Yeah, this is exclusive to the Daily Caller. The Pentagon's paying a Chinese Communist Party linked venture capital firm for tutoring services. The CEO of this firm is now holding a Pentagon contract, and it has long-standing connections to multiple Chinese Communist Party influence units. This is according to the Daily Caller. Primavera Capital, a Hong Kong-based venture capital firm, was an early investor in TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, and owns Princeton Review and Tutor.com. I wonder if anybody knew that. Princeton Review and Tutor.com are owned by the Communist Chinese. Wow. However, a review of the firm's Chinese language website found that the CEO and founder, Fred Hu, he has many ties, extensive ties to the Chinese government and belong to organizations that the U.S. government has identified as part of the Chinese Communist Party's United Front system. The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission says that the CCP uses its United Front system to influence foreign actors and collect intelligence. China's United Front is overseen by the United Front Work Department, which uses the U.S.-China Economic Security Review Commission and has characterized them as a Chinese intelligence service. Interesting, right? Very interesting. Now, for years, I've had guests on the show, and you've probably heard on, in different places, that so much of the influence that we see from China is for the sake of destroying America, gathering intelligence, and having influence. Well, more and more of this stuff is coming to light, and yet here we are. And it wouldn't surprise me if, we had more concrete evidence, and we did a couple of nights ago. We were talking with one of our guests that explained that the largest investors in the LGBTQ plus movement in the United States are from China. And they don't invest in it in China. They only invest in that here in the United States. How about that? Anyway, I want to talk about this Funny Willis stuff a little bit, and I'm hoping that our folks in the studio can get one of our legal experts on the phone to chat with us a little bit about that, because there's a few moving parts there that I want to get to. So, folks, stick around. We're going to get to that and a whole lot more. Big show tonight. It's Friday. I know you're out to dinner with your girlfriend, your spouse, your wife, your husband, but keep the radio going. Kick your feet up. Enjoy. Bring the family around the radio. You're going to enjoy this show tonight. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
He is focusing on the conduct in terms of what happened at the hearing. And, as rightly he should be. And the reason it is so infuriating is because it damages this case. That's why I really think it's not just Wade who obviously is going to be removed, but I think Fani Willis, for the best for this case to be protected, really needs to remove herself voluntarily so that this doesn't linger and this case can go forward in the strongest possible way.
That is Andrew Weissman. Now, you guys know Andrew Weissman. He's one of the brainchilds behind the Russian collusion hoax. And Andrew Weissman was on television, again, peddling his bag of goods, saying that not only does the boyfriend have to go, but Funny Willis has to go because she's not so funny after all. Now, listen, Andrew Weissman is a detestable person, in my opinion. He should be disbarred for what he's done in his career. But here he is, and he's saying that Funny Willis has to go. And I agree with him, and I don't want to agree with this guy, but I do agree with him. Now, I asked our folks in the control room to get us an expert, somebody who's up to speed on everything that's going on here, and they were able to get a hold of Mike Howell, the director of the Oversight Project at the Heritage Foundation. Mike Howell, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good to be with you again, Rich.
You bet, brother. So I want you to bring us up to speed. For all of us non-lawyers out there that see what's going on, we see a little bit of a win for Trump, and I think many of us are happy that this is happening, but it doesn't mean it's over. Walk us through.
Right. So your viewers are probably well aware of what's going on in Georgia. It's one of the many, lawfare criminal investigations against President Trump. And so this prosecutor down there, Fani Willis, was caught red-handed and lied under oath about an affair she was having where she directed almost $1 million to her subordinate that she hired, a guy by the name of Nathan Wade. This was brought up in the course of the trial and saying, Trump's team was basically saying, hey, you cannot have this going on. This is clearly a conflict of interest. And Judgment Day came today, and the judge made this decision that basically said, you know what, this is a mess. We're going to only have the lovebird Nathan Wade off the case. Fani, you can proceed. And so we're back to basically the case being at its, standard momentum against President Trump with this huge black eye on it. But the decision today was honestly a travesty. This whole thing should have been thrown out. I mean, what is going on when you have this rogue prosecutor down in Georgia with a loony theory to begin with? I mean, this is a case that can only be brought in the furthest of left areas where you have courts that are predisposed to hate Trump, that has no business being in the court. And this is where we're at in the United States of America right now.
Let me tell you, Mike Howell, I think this is it's crazy, but I'm happy that we were able to get this actual hearing to happen, where this stuff was brought to light, where these potential perjury charges were discussed regarding Funny Willis and her boyfriend. All of this came to light. I can think if this were New York, that never would have happened, right? They would have swept all that under the rug. And speaking of New York, the judge in New York has now delayed that trial as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. But I want to hit on something you brought up there. This did not come to light because of the beauty of the legal system in the United States of America. This came to light because of dogged legal work by people who were being criminally prosecuted down to their last penny on our side of the ledger. who went and investigated and found the obvious implications of Fannie sticking her fanny where it did not belong and paying off the guy that, she brought into this whole mess. And so this isn't a miracle of the justice system working. This is people who have had it all the way weaponized against them, going out on their own and figuring it out. And last, I'm sorry to go back to this. You brought up Weissman at the beginning, and I was kicking myself because he is at the 5 levels above the food chain on Fonnie Willis. Okay. He's calling the shots. He understands that they have a million cases going on in a bunch of different places. And Fannie has discredited a lot of it by having this, affair and lying under oath. And so he's basically, putting her out to pasture and saying, we'll take our chances elsewhere. You want to know how we know that Fonnie Willis is so low? We placed her at the vice president's residence because we went and searched logs, my team, to say, hey, let's find the connective tissue to her and the Biden administration. She was up there a couple months before they announced all this, getting coached, I'm sure. And she's one of a couple hundred people meeting with the vice president. Okay, so it's not like she's some prime star. She's a foot soldier taking the dumbest legal theory you can imagine, trying to make a name for herself. And the only name she made for herself across this country is, a big-time liar and a cheater.
Yeah, who brings her boyfriend into the office. Yeah, it really didn't work well for her. Now, before we go, and I want you to come back next week if it's possible, if you can make time for us on Monday night or Tuesday night to really bring us up to speed. But I didn't want the week to end without an update on this, Mike Howell. But tell us about the New York hush money trial and how they've decided to put a hold on that.
Right. So there's a lot going on in New York. It's okay to be confused because they're making that purposeful. But yes, there is a hold on that, but don't count your chickens before they hatch here. I mean, obviously there's a massive $500 million judgment the other day up in New York. So we're reading the materials. It is good that there is a temporary hold, but what's happening in New York is a bunch of people who hold the positions of power got there by promises to end Donald Trump, and that's what they're aiming to do. And so I don't think anyone should take any sort of celebration at this point. It's weathering the storm, and New York is probably bearing down the hardest next to Jack Smith, who is a rabid, out of control prosecutor.
I can't wait to get your update on him. Folks, we're on with Mike Howell. He's director of the Oversight Project at the Heritage Foundation. Mike, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with you and the wonderful work you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rich. So follow us on X at Oversight and then the letters PR. We're suing Biden more than anyone else out there and dropping documents that are propelling a lot of the investigations and counter investigations. And you'll see them right there. You might make connections that we don't. So check them out and help us out.
Absolutely. Folks, make sure you check them out at Oversight PR on X. And you can also look into Mike Howell and his staff page at the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org. Mike Howell, I appreciate you staying up late to join us tonight on kind of short notice, but I definitely want to do at least a half hour with you sometime next week to really get into this because it seems like you guys are doing a lot of the legwork to fight this, and I really appreciate it, sir.
I would love to. Thank you, Rich.
You bet. All right, folks, we're coming right back. We continue the conversation on the culture war. Big shout out again to Mike Howell and the Oversight Project for joining us on short notice. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. And listen to this, familia. We have a clip of audio from good old Mayor Pete. Remember Mayor Pete? He's now Secretary Pete Buttigieg. and his husband was visiting a school, and I want you to hear exactly what he had to say to these kids.
All right. I pledge my heart. To the rainbow. The not so typical gay camp. One camp. Full of pride. Indivisible. With affirmation and equal rights for all. Watch your head.
So that's Mayor Pete Buttigieg's husband, Secretary Buttigieg's husband, leading a pseudo pledge of allegiance to a gay camp. This is a bunch of kids attending camp. It's a gay camp. Again, I'm not faulting them for being gay. I'm faulting him for making such a big deal of it. And the whole thing is just bizarre to me, honestly. I've got to tell you, I'm a Gen Xer, so, I'm almost a boomer, if you will. But I want to talk about this because Generation Z is under attack. And this attack on Generation Z is alarming to me because I've got two kids, 18 and 22 years old, and they're part of Generation Z. And, I've done everything I could to teach them what I know and to help them. But there's so many kids out there that are lost and being led astray by guys like Mayor Pete's husband. And I want to get with the author of this book. Listen to this. The End of the Alphabet, How Generation Z Can Save America. And I think that's a really positive take. And Isabel Brown, you've seen her. She does some amazing content online. She's host of the Turning Point USA original documentary, The Eye of the Storm. And she's the author of the aforementioned book, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. And she's with us now. I want to pick her brain a little bit. Isabel Brown, welcome to the program.
Rich, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Thank you. And thanks for doing everything you do. I know it's not easy putting yourself out there, being a Gen Z person and being so countercultural, which is normal and right? But nowadays, doing the right thing is always going against the current. Let's talk a little bit about this. What's your reaction, or what was your original gut reaction to when you heard Mayor Pete's husband making this new Pledge of Allegiance for kids at a gay camp?
I wish I could say I was shocked, amazed, and appalled, but sadly, this is just the latest example in a litany of a cultural barrage that the left has done everything they can to institute authoritarianism, pledging allegiance to the alphabet mafia, as many people would call them, or the rainbow flag, and just turning our reality into what I like to call the upside down, invoking some imagery from Stranger Things, maybe my generation's favorite TV show. And I always like to say that, in the 2020s, up is down and down is up, right is wrong and wrong is right. Men are women and women are men. And the more we allow voices like this to continue indoctrinating and infiltrating our schools, our camps, our entertainment industry, our politics, the more it continues to become normalized. But I do think there's a whole lot of reason to have hope for a big cultural backlash and pendulum swing with our generation coming into adulthood.
Now, Isabel Brown, I think you're terrific. I've seen you, we've done some TV stuff on Newsmax, and I see your commentary all the time online, and I think it's terrific. But I have to say, I think it's odd, right? I think it's odd. You're not in the norm. You're not in the majority of a Generation Z person and the views that you have. How did that come about?
Incredibly, that's often the response that I get from those older than myself, especially coming from traditional media and radio and television. I'm often confronted with this idea that the dreaded Generation Z is destroying America, but it's nice there's a tiny minority of voices standing in truth. The reality is the reason I wrote my book, not just to inspire our generation to stand up and lead and stop waiting for permission, but I also wrote it because I'm finding that there's a fundamental misunderstanding about the true identity of my generation. Separate any sort of partisan political connotation from this word necessarily, but when you start looking at lifestyle and choices and culture, Gen Z is the most conservative cultural generation America has seen since World War II. There is abundant evidence to back that up, not just in data and statistics, but also anecdotally with what I'm seeing with people my siblings' age and even your children's age, as you just mentioned, Rich, were foregoing leftist arts in education and instead choosing trade schools or entrepreneurship. 62% of our generation has already started our own business. 93% of us say that we still want to get married, which is astounding.
Wow.
In a time where we have the lowest marriage rate in American history. We're all quitting our birth control, no matter how you would identify from a partisan political perspective, because we're realizing that it's making us sick every day. We're deleting our dating apps. We're really radically taking back culture from a punk rock countercultural perspective. And historically, that might have looked like, covering your body in tattoos and leather jackets and spiky hair in a punk rock perspective. But
Right.
today, as you just mentioned, to be punk rock, to be countercultural, is to embrace traditional values in a new age way.
Wow. Well, listen, I love to stand corrected, and I'm happy that you're saying that, because I don't know a ton of Gen Zers. I know my kids, and they are rather conservative, but they kind of grew up going to CPAC, right? So I think, my kids I tend to think my kids are the exception to the rule, because I'm a Puerto Rican guy from Brooklyn that's a conservative, and I live in Jersey now. And again, very atypical. I'm in the minority, but perhaps that's my generation, right? Maybe it's Gen X that's overtly liberal, and maybe Gen Z saw the light. And if that's the case, tell us what some of the ideas that you've put forward in the book, how Generation Z can save America.
I'm so excited to see more young people standing up for truth, because, the truth is this is not a new idea. And I always love reminding people my age and younger of this. When you ask people to describe what the founding fathers looked like, you'll usually get a unified chorus of old white men. But really, on July 4th, 1776, our founding fathers were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Even Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, was only 33 years old on July 4th, 1776. And we're reminding ourselves of that every day by realizing young voices driving culture forward is the foundation of our country. And it has to be if America is to survive extinction into another generation. So we're doing that in a whole different deluge of ways, be it culturally with some of those examples I just mentioned, reclaiming the family, moving out of big cities, eating real food instead of crap grown in a laboratory or built on chemicals, speaking our voices online in a time where it's very difficult to find real journalism in legacy traditional media, but also politically. That might not look like overwhelming support for a Republican Party today, but you have to remind yourself, most Gen Zers are still teenagers and have yet to register to vote. If you look at exit polling from 2018, 2020, and 2022, we are trending significantly more Republican and conservative with every passing election. But maybe even more importantly, I think we're thinking bigger than the two-party system. And you see that with the younger cohort of our generation. 52% of the younger half of Gen Z that's just now registering to vote is registering as independent with a capital I. They are not blindly pledging allegiance to a party or a politician or a specific color on their voter registrations. They're looking for people who are going to bring America to a future we can all be proud to call home again, who are going to follow through on those campaign trail promises, and who will get us back to our foundation of a government of, for, and by the people.
Outstanding. Isabel Brown, I want you to pause right there. We're going to come right back with you and continue talking about your brand new book. And listen, folks, you got to get a copy of this book. The title, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. I recommend getting 2 copies of the book. Make sure you get one for yourself, one that you can give away. We're coming right back with the author, Isabel Brown. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And listen to this. NBC News 3 days ago. I think I talked about it 3 days ago, but I'm going to remind you of it. Nearly 30% of Gen Z women identify as LGBTQ, according to a Gallup poll of 12,000 people, 18 and older across the country, found that women are nearly twice as likely as men to identify as LGBTQ. Almost 30% of Gen Z women identify as LGBTQ, mostly as bisexual, Jeffrey Jones, senior editor at Gallup, told NBC News. And that's where a lot of growth seems to be happening. Isabel Brown, I love what you're saying. NBC News is refuting what you're saying. I hope that they're fake, phony, fraud, fake news. Tell us more.
I wish I could say it was totally based in a lie, Rich, but, it's interesting. This is perhaps the greatest cultural issue of our time, and there have been courageous journalists really investigating this cultural fad and arguably contagion for young women for many years now. Abigail Schreier, for example, comes to mind with her book, Irreversible Damage, that I truly could not put down. But the more I've started digging into studies like this, there are countless others saying across both genders, there's more than 20% of all Gen Zers who self-identify as LGBTQ+. I think that self-identify component is what we really are losing focus on here, because it has become culturally trendy to attach yourself to the rainbow flag, whether that be at summer camp like that audio we just reacted to, or in the halls of your high school, or online where there is immense pressure, especially as a teenage girl who feels awkward and uncomfortable already in her own skin, to feel achievable again and to feel welcomed and accepted again, which happens overwhelmingly with these massive online communities pushing you towards transitioning or even just identifying as bisexual. But what I find really interesting is the number of plus sign extra alphabet letters that keep getting added on to this acronym every day with things that have nothing to do with your sexual orientation or even your gender identity, but all of a sudden warrant you being a part of the Pride community today. Rich, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term demisexual before.
I don't know what that is.
I certainly hadn't. Yeah, I had it before I was researching for my book. But to identify as demisexual means that you are sexually attracted to some people, but not all people, but especially people that you have a romantic connection with. So essentially, all of us, every human being, every human being could identify as demisexual. I think these numbers are wildly falsely inflated because of this cultural fad that it is trendy and really acceptable, but also vogue for people to be identifying as part of the Pride community. And the more it gets crazier and crazier, the more I think we'll see a swing in the other direction.
Isabel Brown, I think that's really it for me. Again, being the dad of two teenage, one's 22 now, and one's 18. But I can tell you, having raised two girls, I can tell you, I really feel that is what it is. It's this this rebellion, this feeling like I'm part of something where I can join this gang, right? This LGBT, the alphabet mafia. I can join this because it'll piss off my parents. It pisses off everybody. It appeases the people at school that are like overly coaching and accepting of these ideas. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. This wasn't a thing when I was a kid. It was like marijuana was the thing when I was a kid. Now it's, being gay. But it's just so fascinating to me that this is where we are today. And I feel like a book like yours really kind of blows the doors off this and says, it doesn't really have to be that way. And you're finding that not everybody's going down that road. And I think we're kind of almost misled by the fake news media into thinking that everybody in Gen Z is par for the course with the LGBTQ agenda.
I couldn't have said that better myself. I've come to really reflect on the fact that the mainstream media continues to, out of necessity, operate in manufacturing outrage and anger. Because when the news gets crazier and crazier every day, you have to outdo yourself tomorrow in order to retain the same viewership. Otherwise, people just get exhausted with outrage and they turn it off. But if it's scarier tomorrow, they feel the need to be informed. And so I think stuff like this, where if you take a tiny bit of logical thinking, knowing that, well, these numbers are probably dramatically increasing year after year because we're increasing the number of new identities that didn't exist yesterday. So naturally, more people will fall under the umbrella. That takes away some of the mystery and the outrage and the fear that the mainstream media often loves to stoke in American culture to perpetuate this division and to get people hooked into what they are saying rather than seeing the bigger picture. Even stuff like this is so fascinating to me that young women are targeted as these extreme leftists And I believed that for so long myself that, we're seeing all the right things with young men. There was a big study dropped a couple of weeks ago that 17-year-old Gen Z boys, seniors in high school, are the most conservative they've been in 50 years. They are 70+% wildly conservative, but women are the exact opposite. And even that, I had to stop and think that might be true politically from a partisan label, but I was on the very viral, controversial dating podcast, the Whatever podcast last year, and was talking to leftist feminist women, listening to them tell me feminism has lied to me, hookup culture has lied to me. I just quit my birth control because I was tired of poisoning myself, and I just deleted all of my dating apps. I made a video 2 days ago that got millions of views of a beautiful young woman who was a very famous top 0.1% OnlyFans creator who gave it all up this month to chase Christ instead, who deleted her account, has found faith, and is running in a totally different direction. So we believe culture is downstream, or politics is downstream from culture. And I think it's going to take time for the politically conservative label to hit young women the same way it has for young men. But upstream, culturally, all signs are pointing in that very direction.
Well put, Isabel Brown. Stick with us. I want you to make your final plug when we come back. Folks, we're on with Isabel Brown. I want you to pick up 2 copies, not 1, but 2 copies of her brand new book, which is typically available wherever you get books. And again, the book is called The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue with Isabel Brown. And again, if you haven't written this down or gone on to Amazon or wherever you get your books, make sure you do. It's The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. Get a copy for yourself, 1 to give away. Isabel Brown, in the last few minutes that we have together, I want you to really give the listeners of the program a good sense of what they can expect to take away from reading this book cover to cover.
Oh, that's a phenomenal question, Rich. And thank you so much for having me on the program tonight. It's an honor to address your listeners. I wrote this book primarily for members of our own generation. So if you're listening and you have a Gen Zer in your life that's frustrated about being told to sit down and shut up because we're too young, too inexperienced, and simply too written off by those who came before us to make a difference, I hope this will be the catalyst to encourage our generation to really bring about positive cultural change for generations to come after us in this pivotal, as Vivek Ramaswamy would call it, 1776 moment going into this very, very important, unprecedented election cycle this November. But secondarily, if you feel hopeless about Generation Z, if you're tired of reading all of the crazy headlines, if the latest TikTok video that you watch on a segment of Fox News just continues to give you a bit of heartache, it's so easy to create this false image of who our generation is. But before anything, before politics, I am a Christian and I believe in Jesus Christ. And it was the Bible itself that told our generation and every generation throughout history that we were made for such a time as this. This unique, very difficult, divided, upside-down world we're living in right now requires a courageous group of young people rooted in truth to fight for ourselves, but also every generation still to come. And that happens right here with Gen Z.
You get it, girl. Let everybody know the website, where to find you, and get the book.
You can follow me across social media at The Isabel Brown and buy your copy wherever books are sold.
Outstanding, Isabel Brown. Godspeed to you. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you. Folks, we're coming right back. We continue the discussion. 833-4-VALDEZ. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome. It's the Friday night edition of the program, hour number 2. Our phone number, if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And again, a couple of headlines that are out there. Congressman Jim Jordan, he's chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, demanded answers from the Department of Justice over the arrest of a journalist that writes for The Blaze, Steve Baker, over his January 6th reporting. They locked this guy up. We talked about that about 3 weeks ago, and he's looking into it. And that's exactly, I think, what we expect Congress to do in their oversight function. So as we get more news on that, I'll bring it to you. Again, just to reiterate, the Supreme Court ruled that the public can sue public officials who block them on social media. And it makes me think, for years I've been inviting AOC All Out Crazy, our least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I've been inviting her on my program since I had a local show in New York. We have a national show now. And still, crickets, nada, nada, nada. No response from AOC. And looks like maybe now I can sue her if she blocks me. I didn't get blocked by AOC, but one of her staff members did tell me what the F is wrong with me and whatnot, and they eventually got fired. Not for that per se, but for other stuff that they did that were also kind of off color. And we'll see. We'll see if this SCOTUS thing can help us. Maybe she'll just agree and come on the show. That's really all I'm looking for her to do. And Bernie Sanders, Bernard Sanders, from Vermont, he's screaming at a reporter when he was asked about his latest dumb idea. That's how it's being reported on the Bongino Report, which is pretty funny. We'll bring you some of that audio later. And I want to get into the guest, because this is an interesting topic, I think, because I've never really spoken with someone that worked on a submarine. And I think this is fascinating stuff. Now, our guest is the author of a brand new book. It's forthcoming. You can pre-order it now. Brian Andrews, he's written the book 4 Minutes. And him and his co-author, Jeffrey Wilson, international bestsellers. The book, again, 4 Minutes. And I want to welcome him to the show right now. Brian Andrews, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Rich. Looking forward to the interview.
Thank you. Likewise. And I was really interested in speaking with somebody who was a nuclear engineer and former submarine officer, because I thought, man, if you're writing books, this has got to be good, right? I've never been on a submarine other than maybe a tour somewhere, but in reality, this is the stuff that you only see on television shows, and you guys are writing about it. Now, your upcoming techno-thriller, 4 Minutes, written by you and Jeffrey Wilson, it's coming out in April, and I want to encourage listeners, if they enjoy this interview, to go out and pre-order a copy for themselves and one to give away as a friend. But I want you to tell us a little bit about how your service, both as a nuclear engineer working on a submarine and whatnot, how did you parlay that into becoming the author of thrillers?
Great question. So yes, when I served in the United States Navy, I was an officer on a fast attack submarine. The United States, our fleet of submarines are all nuclear powered. So every officer on a submarine is a nuclear engineer qualified. And that just sort of dates back to, the very origins of the program with Admiral Rickover. He had to make a deal with Congress. They didn't want to have, basically floating nuclear bombs sitting in the harbors of their major cities if they weren't confident that the people that were going to be operating them were competent. So It's kind of unique to our service that, the people in charge are nuclear engineer trained. But it's a really, really fantastic group of people. Highly motivated, doing great things to keep our country safe. So, that was something I was interested in doing is serving my country, and that was the community that I chose. But one of the interesting things about being in the Navy is, you have long transits. especially on submarines. There's periods where the ship is rigged, the boat, the submarine, whatever you want to call it. We call it different names, but it's rigged for quiet. So you're trying not to make noise because you're trying to be stealthy. And so, during those watch periods, one of the things I would do sometimes to help pass the time is, I would tell stories. And I sort of considered myself a collector of stories. So when I would go into ports, I would find out from people on other boats. I would say, tell me something funny that happened, something interesting that happened on your deployment or while we were away. And I'd save up all these stories, and then when we were underway, I would dole them out, to keep people interested. And right when I left the Navy, I remember one of the guys said to me, hey, you're a pretty good storyteller. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I hadn't ever thought about that, but he kind of put that bug in my ear, and that was sort of something that I never forgot. And so then years later, I decided, I think maybe I'll try my hand at writing a novel.
Well, it seems like it's gone really well for you. And Brian Andrews, again, welcome to the program. I want to hear all about this new book, and it sounds like a really interesting thriller. Tell us about the 4 minutes, and how did that start? How did you hatch this particular one?
So you mentioned in the beginning of the interview that I am a co-author, and that's true. So I work with another Navy veteran. His name's Commander Jeff Wilson, and he served with Naval Special Warfare. So one of the fun things about being a co-author is that when we sit down to plan any sort of book, there's a really fun sort of brainstorming session. And so the genesis of 4 minutes is we were trying to think about, what would be an interesting topic that had to do with, the intersection of technology and the human condition. So that's something that we're both interested in, especially as, me being a nuclear engineer, familiar with, that's the ultimate intersection, I would say, of the human condition and technology, is living aboard one of the most complicated machines we've ever built, a nuclear submarine. And then my co-author, Jeff, was a combat surgeon, and so he's also interested about how advances in medicine, advances in technology affects people's psychology and their health and their well-being, and we're both kind of nerds when it comes to action stories. So we started brainstorming. All of our books start with a what-if question, and we said, one of the problems with modern espionage, counterintelligence, counterterrorism operations is just this idea and this constant problem that you never quite have enough information, right? Some of the information is incomplete, or you get the information too late. And we said, what if you could look into the future, just a glimpse, and you could see what happened, and then you could try to stop it. So, for example, Rich, let's say that we knew a month ahead of time that 9/11 was going to happen. Well, you could take steps in the present to find those terrorists that are at those airline training, classes, and where they're hiding in Florida or Oklahoma or New York or wherever they are. You find those guys, you could arrest them, you could interrogate them, you could figure out the plan, you could stop it before it happens. It would be the ultimate intelligence collection tool. And so that was our what-if question. What if you could do that? And then we put some parameters on it. We said, well, we don't want it to be that you get everything you can. It's super easy, because nothing in life is easy. There's always complexity. So we sort of set some rules around it that seemed realistic to us, based on that there would be power requirements and there would be stay time requirements. So in 4 minutes, the hook is that you can go to the future to collect intelligence and see what happened, but you can only stay for 4 minutes.
Huh. Fascinating. Well, I know that you guys have written about your character here, Special Operations Chief Tyler Brooks, and I'd love for you to get into a little bit more of this and help the listeners understand the plot a little bit. Folks, we are having a conversation with the author of the book, and let me tell you, 4 minutes is the name of the book. And Brian Andrews is one of the authors. I definitely recommend picking up a copy or two, one for yourself, one to give away, of 4 minutes. And again, this is a techno-thriller from these guys. That I'm reading the description. It's really, really interesting. It involves a SEAL team And I'm going to have him explain it because obviously he can do a better job of that than I can. I'm going to give you the phone number if you want to join the conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez with you straight till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And I'm keeping you company with our guest. He's the author of the brand new book, 4 Minutes, Brian Andrews. And listen, this is a fascinating account here. I'm taking a look at it. It says, it said that no plan survives contact with the enemy, but what if you remove the one thing that no one can control, uncertainty about the future? And we left off talking about how Special Operations Chief Tyler Brooks can potentially travel into the future. And I think this is a fascinating take on things. It really is quite a thriller. Brian Andrews, tell us how you plan this out, a little bit about the plot.
Sure. So the book opens where you meet Senior Chief or Chief Tyler Brooks. He's a special operations operator, which means that he is with the Navy SEALs, Naval Special Warfare, and he's with his unit, and they're conducting what they would consider normal, capture kill operation. They're conducting it against a terror organization in Africa. And, something happens when they're there that sort of defies explanation. You can't quite figure out, how it seems like their intelligence was faulty and the enemy maybe anticipated that they were going to be there when they thought that they had advantage on the enemy. And so, he escapes with his life, but, they take some casualties and things go wrong. And so now after that, he's feeling pretty upset about, the faulty intelligence. He kind of wants to blame his intelligence, the lieutenant in the intel shop, the N2 shop, who's in charge of sort of planning the mission and providing intelligence real time. And what happens is a strange guy shows up on the aircraft carrier while he's getting treated for his injuries. And he says, what if I could offer you an opportunity where I could remove that uncertainty, where the intelligence that you had before you conducted a mission would be rock solid. We would know exactly where the enemy was going to be and what they were going to do. And Tyler thinks to himself, it sounds too good to be true, but if you could offer me something like that, I'd be interested. And he says, okay, well, I want you to sign this paperwork. We're standing up a new special task force called Task Force Omega, and we'll read you in when you get there. And so he flies Tyler and the other members of the team that Tyler meets when he gets there, and they are introduced to this idea that seems too implausible to even be possible, which is that they can travel into the future 28 days and they can stay for 4 minutes, and then they're going to come back to the present and stop whatever threat or attack they identify in the future.
Fascinating. Now, you and your co-author have gotten into taking over this very famous series of books, Jack Ryan. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in this space.
Sure. So we've, the 4 Minutes novel that we've been talking about, it's not our first rodeo. We've co-authored about 24 books together. Our first series together was the Tier 1 series, and that's about Naval Special Warfare and U.S. Navy SEALs. But it doesn't have any science fiction elements, no speculative elements. It's just straight up military thrillers, action with geopolitics, and we love that series. That's our sort of our meat and potatoes series. And the first book came out in 2016, and we just slowly gained readership and gained a reputation in the space. And it just so happens that we got approached. I think simply because the editor who used to work with Tom Clancy was recognizing our work. And some of your listeners who may or may not be aware, Tom Clancy passed away in 2013. But after he did, the Clancy estate and Penguin Random House, who was his publisher, they decided to carry on his legacy by continuing to publish books in the Jack Ryan series. So the first author that they hired to do that is a gentleman named Mark Greaney, great guy. You might have seen Netflix. He had a big movie called The Gray Man, starred Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, and that movie was based on his book series called The Gray Man series. So Mark wrote several books in the Clancy Jack Ryan series, and then he wrote his own series. And then he eventually passed the torch to a former U.S. Marshal named Mark Cameron. And Mark wrote, I think, 5 or 6 books in the Jack Ryan series. And then Mark decided he wanted to retire from it. And so Tom Colgan, who was Tom Clancy's editor, came to us and said, what do you guys think about writing the Jack Ryan series?
Wow. That's got to be pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. It's also a little bit scary, because if you think about Jack Ryan, I mean, he's probably one of the most famous action heroes in American pop culture. You've got The Hunt for Red October, starred Alec Baldwin, and then I think Harrison Ford did Patriot Games. He did 2 movies, and then you had Ben Affleck, and you had Chris Pine. So you have these movies, and then you have John Krasinski doing the show on Amazon, and not to mention there's a dozen books in the series that have sold millions and millions of copies. So if you walk down the street and you ask somebody who is Jack Ryan, they're going to say, I've heard of that guy. And so to be asked to sort of take over the series is a little bit scary, a little bit nerve-wracking. But, it was also something that I don't think we could have said no to because, I read Hunt for Red October when I was on a submarine in the Pacific, following around the Russians,
How cool is that?
So, I mean, how could I say no to the opportunity to write, to one of my heroes' characters? And the irony of this whole thing, Rich, is that our first book, Act of Defiance, comes out this year in May on the 40th anniversary of the Hunt for Red October. So we decided to really embrace that. And so the Act of Defiance, I wouldn't say it's a sequel to Hunt for Red October, but we tried to kind of do what Top Gun Maverick did for Top Gun, which is, reimagine what Hunt for Red October would be like 40 years later.
Folks, get a copy of the book 4 Minutes, Brian Andrews and Jeffrey Wilson. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. Brian Andrews, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being here. Godspeed to you with the book, sir.
Thank you for having me on the show, Rich.
You bet. All right, folks, we're coming right back. More to come straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation this evening, Friday night, by the way. Open Phone America is coming up next. If you want to join us, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, live until 1 a.m. Eastern Time. And I want to talk about a couple of things that are going on, right? Something I never talk about, right? You know, we don't do sports here. This is not a sports program. But every now and again, I'll bring in somebody who does know about sports, right? As much as I know about sports is, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I know. But the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Dak Prescott, claims that he's been a victim of a $100 million extortion plot. Now, extortion plots, we could talk about those all day. So I want to talk about some extortion for $100 million, and he's filed a lawsuit. Now, Bobby Burack is a columnist with Outkick, outkick.com, great website, and they talk about sports and culture and some politics. And he reports and analyzes the latest topics in media, culture, sports, and politics. And he's with us now. Bobby Burack, welcome back.
Rich, I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So let's break this down here. I'm a non-sports guy, and we're usually talking about news and culture and everything but sports. Tell us what's going on with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, excuse me. This is following a larger trend in sports where we've seen athletes be falsely accused of whether it be sexual assault or violence. And even if nothing is proven, in the meantime that an allegation is presented and there's an investigation, professional sports leagues have suspended and or released that player. And you might say, well, that's unfortunately happening all over the country. Yeah, but it's different in sports. Professional athletes are uniquely vulnerable to these allegations because they have such a short shelf life, right? If an actor is accused and has to miss 2 years of acting, well, they still have 40, 50 more years. The average professional sports player lasts only about 5 years. So if you take away 2 or 3 years of their prime, they don't get those years back. So it makes them susceptible to these extortion plots because a lot of the players would rather just pay to get this stuff out of the way, even if it's not accurate.
Right. Otherwise, they may not be around.
Yeah, so 2 examples currently are Trevor Bauer and Matt Ariza. So recap, Trevor Bauer was a top-flight pitcher in Major League Baseball. Well, a woman accused him of sexual assault. He was kicked out of the Major League Baseball. He's not played since. And we found out this past November through text message, the woman lied. She admitted to her friends she made it all up. Well, he didn't get those 2 years back, and he hasn't pitched since. So his career is over. You can't just stop playing a professional sport, then pick it back up years later. So Dak Prescott, it's good that he's fighting back because a lot of athletes would just pay for a lie just for that lie not to damage them.
Wow. This is heartbreaking, honestly. You know, and I'm thinking, while you're saying all that, I'm thinking Mike Tyson and all the allegations against him back in the days. And I always thought that was the case back then. And we've seen it happen time and again. E. Jean Carroll, Donald Trump. It's over and over. This is the common theme of how they attack people that have money. So let's break it down a little bit. How often does this happen, these $100 million extortion plots?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, my fear is we don't know the extent because there's probably a lot of athletes paying some amount. Now, maybe not $100 million for some background. Professional quarterbacks make way more money than most athletes, so maybe some are involved in $10 million shakedowns. But it does come at an interesting time with the aftermath of Ariza and Bauer. I mean, Ariza was a punter in the NFL. He got drafted. He was billed as a generational talent. A woman accused him of gang raping her. He was let go by his team. Nobody looked at him. He had to sacrifice all that money. Now we find out he wasn't even in the location in which the woman accused him. So this is a young man who worked his entire life to make it to the NFL and had that immediately removed because of some bogus allegation. So I can't blame players for paying for this stuff to go away, but I'm also happy that Dak Prescott is saying, I'm not going to further enable this. I'm going to come forward and tell you exactly what is going on.
Folks, we're on with Bobby Burack. He's a columnist of Outkick.com, and we're going to continue our conversation with him straight ahead. Folks, if you want to join this late-night national conversation, feel free to give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We go to the phones. Let's go to Al calling us from Atlanta, Georgia. Hotlanta, the AWGKA. Al, go right ahead. You're on with Bobby Burack and Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Oh, yes. I was wondering, is it possible that professional athletes can get insurance against being sued in a case like this? I know doctors and other professionals have themselves insured in case of malpractice or something like that happen. Also, isn't it something in the law about a victim having the right to face his accuser? Could you demand that they be put under a lie detector or hypnosis to tell the truth?
Great questions, Al. Bobby Burack, weigh in.
Yeah, so the first one, I'm not familiar with any insurance. And the problem with the theory of, facing them in court is that, again, that takes so long. And even if an accuser made something up, it doesn't prevent sponsors, sometimes $10, $20 million a year sponsors, disassociating because of accusations. So a lot of these athletes are validated eventually, but they've already lost so much along the way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Al, for the call. I appreciate it. Now, Bobby Burack, I was scrolling on Instagram, as I often do when I am off the air and during commercial breaks, and I'm looking at a woman, and she's telling a story, and she's like, I'm changing in the locker room, and there's a little girl in the corner, and she's wearing a towel, and I see a man in here, and this man's getting dressed, and she's at the gym, and she says she's at a Planet Fitness, and she freaks out about it, and she says, that's it, I'm canceling my Planet Fitness, and she's calling on all sorts of people to also cancel their Planet Fitness memberships, of which I have one, and I was just at yesterday. And I'm considering it because this is a big deal, and I see you've written a satirical story on this. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so that woman, I believe her, what she says is that there's a man in the Planet Fitness shaving who supposedly identifies as a woman. And this is what bothers me so much about the people who say, well, who cares about the trans movement? Let them be. The trans movement is so consequential that it impacts other people, right? The same people who say, oh, don't worry about it. Well, do they have daughters in the locker rooms when a biological male takes off his clothing or when he's in their spaces? The idea that this stuff is just part of the culture war is a complete lie. This movement is so consequential. And here's another example of a born man taking his clothes off and shaving in a female locker room at Planet Fitness where little girls roam around.
Yeah, it really is just fascinating to me what's going on. And I feel like, it stinks because there's a brand new Planet Fitness near me. And again, I'm considering joining this boycott. And where would I go to the gym otherwise? I barely go as it is, Bobby Burack. Imagine if I don't go to my local gym, where am I going to go? I might have to work out at home. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to remember that Americans don't have to put up with this stuff, right? The greatest divide in this country is between the ruling class and the working class. But 2023 proved to us the working class still controls this country. When they push back against Bud Light tanked. When they push back against Disney and Target, their impact was substantial. If Americans don't approve of what's going on, they don't have to remain silent. They don't even have to go on Twitter and complain about it. They can make a statement with their wallets, their actions, and their transactions.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I'm hoping that people can make an impact with their voices with respect to what we're seeing at the southern border, right? It seems like there's an absolute invasion, a disaster of an administration. I saw a clip recently that cited a statistic that I haven't fact-checked, but it blew me away. And it said we've now admitted more illegal immigrants than we've had childbirths in the United States. And I was blown away by this number because I thought, man, if we are producing Americans, soon to be Americans, in that quantity faster than we can actually generically produce them by childbirth, we're in a really, really serious problem. And it's coupled with the violence that we see with these Venezuelan transnational criminal organizations that are now coming in, these gangs. And you look at all of this and you think, man, we're in really bad shape. Young women are getting killed. Young women are being raped. Teenagers are being raped. Toddlers are being shot. All sorts of things are happening, Bobby Burack, and it feels like there is no help on the way. I know you've written a piece about this. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, and look, I'll make a prediction right here. If Joe Biden does not win re-election, and the odds say in the betting market says he won't, I believe immigration will be the leading reason why. So I wrote a piece laying out how Lincoln Riley is the story that Joe Biden can't suppress. We all remember the Hunter Biden laptop story where big tech was able to sweep that under the rug. But this story is not going away, right? Joe Biden tethered his campaign in 2020 to George Floyd. He claimed that George Floyd illustrated a larger problem of systemic racism in the police force, which I don't see any evidence of. I've done a lot of research on it. The data points, none of it suggests that. But he does not want to talk about Lincoln Riley. At the time of the piece, he had never even uttered her name because Lincoln Riley, her face, is a reminder of the consequences of his open border policy. That thug that came in here and beat her to death, he doesn't enter this country if our border is not as reckless as it is now. Lincoln Riley's mother suggested Biden and his policy are to blame, calling this completely avoidable. And absolutely, it was. This border problem, Biden's negligence at the border, is the greatest national security threat in my lifetime, and I think everybody listening. It's such a serious problem, and you saw that recent Gallup poll. The number one concern for voters heading into November is illegal immigration, and Lincoln Riley just raised those stakes.
Yeah, listen, it's really well put, and I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think people stop seeing race, in my opinion. Most people stop seeing race when you hear about, somebody's daughter being killed, getting beat to death. I mean, it's just brutal. In the most respectful way, I'm going to say, oftentimes we hear about these things and we hear, oh, they were raped and then killed. And then it's like, oh, wow, well, they were trying to eliminate a witness and not get in trouble. But in this one, there was no rape. This was just the violent, brutal killing of someone that it's just, wow. It's like, for what purpose did this man hurt this girl? I have a daughter that lives on off-campus housing at her university. Same age, 22 years old, and she's involved in some club sports. And I just think, this Lincoln Riley is my daughter, right? This stuff hits home for so many people, and it's so sad, so sad. And the fact that Joe Biden, I'm glad he showed some compassion, but the fact that he just allows this to continue and he didn't start slamming the dais and saying he's going to fire Mayorkas and shut the border and save American children is just so telling to me that he's completely sold out. Bobby Burack, stick with us. We're going to come back and wrap up with you, and I want everybody to know how they can access your columns and keep up to speed with the work that you're doing. Folks, we're on with Bobby Burack from Outkick.com, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. Rich Valdez, and we continue our conversation with Bobby Burack from Outkick.com. We were just discussing some of his columns. And Bobby Burack, what is it that's on your desk right now? What are you working on?
Yeah, Rich, I appreciate it. I think this election cycle we've seen has not broken through with cable news as years prior. We've not seen the election bump, as so call it. And I think that's going to change real quickly because now, look, it's official. Donald Trump is going to be the GOP nominee, but I'm not so sure that Joe Biden's going to be the Democrat nominee. Following the betting market, there's a lot of momentum for Gavin Newsom. I'm going to dive in this week about how real those chances are.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, there's very few options, honestly. I think, Pete Buttigieg was somebody they talked a lot about before, but he hasn't been out there like Newsom has. Newsom has been trying to create, as a shadow campaign, not Barack, Michelle Obama. She's not out there really trying to have a shadow campaign. I think she's out there making hundreds of millions of dollars and stands to lose, a whole lot of that money or not make as much of it as she can if she gets into the race. So I think that's what precludes her from it. So I feel like Gavin Newsom's probably the only shot besides Kamala Harris. And I think the party realizes Kamala Harris is a sinking ship.
Yeah, and I think the party would prefer Michelle Obama over Newsom because that way you're not putting a white guy ahead of a black woman. It's much easier to sell your agenda and race with putting Michelle Obama. But look, their intention has always been onefold: prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House. They know Kamala Harris is not viable. Joe Biden might not be viable. So it's Gavin Newsom, in my opinion, by default, if they plan on replacing him.
Yep, I agree with that. And Bobby, let everybody know how they can follow the work that you're doing, how they access your columns. Give them the whole scoop.
Yeah, you can go to Outkick.com. A lot of the stuff goes on FoxNews.com. We're under their umbrella now. You can find me on Twitter, or X as they call it. And, I really hope the listeners give a chance. I always enjoy coming on with you, and a lot more in store in the coming weeks.
Amen to that. Now, give them your handle real quick.
Yes, at Burack Bobby _. Again, at Burack Bobby _
Bobby Burack, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us tonight. Godspeed to you, sir. And folks, we're coming right back. Open Phone America, a time-honored tradition on this program dating 45 years. Your calls and more are coming up. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. If you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And this third hour, we like to call it Open Phone America because, of course, the phones are open all across America. You're free to join the conversation. And something I want to talk about, I'm going to do a follow-up to something we talked about yesterday. And one of the stories I want to talk about right now is out of Haiti, honestly, and how the Haitian immigrants, we talked about Venezuelan immigrants yesterday, but the Haitian immigrants are also posing a problem. In Massachusetts, there was a horrible story, and we actually have a report on it. Listen to this.
Migrant has been charged with raping a 15-year-old disabled girl at a Rockland hotel. The case already sparking outcry from local leaders. WBZ's Brandon Truitt is live in Rockland with what was revealed in court today. Brandon?
Well, Chris, the state started booking out all of the rooms in this hotel last year as a part of its emergency assistance shelter program. And authorities have confirmed to us that both the victim and suspect in this case lived here.
I have a patron, I don't know if he's a manager or National Guard, on the 911 line, 850 Hingham Street. Going to be for the migrant section.
It was around 7 Wednesday night. Police records show a front desk worker called 911 reporting a 15-year-old disabled girl had been sexually assaulted.
Room 115. Meet the police. EMS response.
Police say they met the teenager in the lobby. Using multiple translators, she told authorities a man in the hotel brought her to his room to help her with an app on her tablet. Once there, he began having sex with her, the girl explained. According to the police report, the girl asked the man to leave her alone, but says that he wouldn't stop. She was ultimately taken to the hospital. Using a description of the man, police found their suspect in the room where the alleged rape happened. With enough evidence, police say they arrested 26-year-old Corey Alvarez. He was formally charged with rape of a child in Hingham District Court Thursday.
That's what happened in Massachusetts, because they didn't stop the migrants from coming in, right? These illegal aliens that are coming in. And again, I don't want to paint every last illegal alien as a rapist or a shooter or a murderer. But the reality is we're seeing an increase in crime. Now, people can make all sorts of arguments. That's fine. I have 2 eyes and I'm not blind. And I see that when you have unchecked immigration, right? Just because someone is poor and someone is in bad shape doesn't mean you open up the door for them, right? The idea of immigration in our country has to be based on merit and need. You know, what do we need? Do we need brain surgeons? Great. If you're coming from a country where you're a top brain surgeon and you want to be a top brain surgeon in the United States, maybe we'll take you. If you're a nurse, we've been importing nurses forever because we haven't been able to train our own nurses because we've been so weak in mathematics and science that we have to import nurses. So great, let's import nurses. But the minute we start importing people who are professional criminals, whether they are part of the transnational Venezuelan organized crime syndicate or folks that are coming out of the civil war that's going on in Haiti with the cannibals versus the corrupt politicians, I'm going to say no thank you, right? And that's exactly what Governor Ron DeSantis is saying. We have a clip of him saying that they've just stopped 25 illegal immigrants on a ship that was coming in. Listen to this.
Our Florida Fish and Wildlife officers interdicted a vessel that had 25 illegal immigrants, potential illegal immigrants from Haiti, in their boat, in their vessel. They had firearms, they had drugs, they had night vision gear, and were boating very recklessly, which would potentially endanger other folks. So that vessel was interdicted near the Sebastian Inlet, and those illegal aliens were turned over to the Coast Guard for deportation.
Again, that's Governor Ron DeSantis talking about the interception of this boat with 25 illegal immigrants coming in, sneaking into the country from Haiti. Florida Fish and Wildlife officials, the ones that intercepted that. And these people had, again, drugs and guns on their boat. So they're not only bringing, again, what did Trump say? They're bringing their rapists, their murderers. I mean, I have to say it, and I say it tongue in cheek, but it's almost like with the victory lap. I think, I didn't think he was wrong then. I don't think he's wrong now. And kudos to Trump for having the foresight, the prescience, if you will, to see this stuff coming. Now, this is what they know as of now. On earlier today or yesterday, DeSantis announced that Florida would deploy additional law enforcement resources to the southern regions of the state in anticipation of a possible wave of Haitian migrants coming to the country, because they knew that the violence over there might cause this to happen. And this is a big deal. Thankfully, Governor DeSantis is having this foresight. He's a heck of a governor compared to the guy that we have in the Oval Office, who says, no, come one, come all. Let's bring them all in. Bring the kids that aren't yours. We've got jobs for them, legal and illegal. This is horrible. I mean, the whole thing is horrible, and it stinks to high heaven of what is really going on in America. But I want to open this up to you all. Let us go to the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Let's go to Tampa, Florida. Eduardo is listening, richvaldez.com. Eduardo, tell us your thoughts on Governor DeSantis and the intercept of this ship.
I think it's a great idea, although I was hearing that they don't really have any arresting powers. I don't know how legit that is. It would be a good idea to take them to Guantanamo Bay, which eventually would lead them to go back to Haiti, but we'll have to see. I also wanted to add...
Yeah, well, just to give you an idea, the federal government, of course, is in charge of immigration. So any state government doesn't have any arrest power for enforcing immigration law unless they're working with ICE in that capacity. And, of course, Biden will never allow that. But they can say to ICE, hey, look, we got these people, come pick them up. Now, whether ICE says, okay, thanks, Governor DeSantis, and releases them into, the little Haiti community in southern Florida outside of Miami, they can do that, or they can actually, deport them or send them somewhere else. I don't know what's happening once they get them, but it's clear that Governor DeSantis is trying to make sure that something is happening there. And this is the same problem that Greg Abbott faces, whether he's putting up razor wire and getting, all sorts of pushback from the federal government. So that was that part. I don't know that they're going to be able to put anybody in Guantanamo Bay. It would be a possibility, I would suppose, if the federal government was doing it, but I don't think it's going to happen. Now, I know you also had some comments on Speaker Johnson and Israel and Ukraine, so go right ahead.
Right. So I was reading that they're thinking about doing that on a separate bill, well, kind of a standalone bill. I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, you got parents who are having like $1,400 that they're having to spend on their kids because they're not sticking on as far as getting a job to help out with expenses. I just heard somebody putting their rent on a credit card because they can't pay. So I think the government has forgotten all about the Americans. You got illegals that are, if you bring in more people, they're going to be committing crimes along with regular Americans. So there's something that we need to pay more attention to about the American folks more than people that are coming overseas.
Yeah, I think that's always been the case, right, Eduardo? We have to focus on America first, and we've got too many people that are dealing with different types of crises in America to introduce all these new problems and create new crises like the crisis at the border and others that Joe Biden's created, whether it's these transnational Venezuelan criminal organizations, now this new onslaught coming in from Haiti because they're fleeing the massive corruption of the Clintons and everything else going on in their beloved country. I mean, it's really just a fascinating case study in ineptitude, in my opinion. Eduardo, thank you for your call, my brother. Godspeed to you. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, let us continue our conversation. Late night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to, let's see, where did I say we're going? Dallas, Texas, KLIF, and check in with Don. Hey, Don, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Rich Valdez, it's nice talking to you.
Thank you.
I had two short things, but with your previous conversation, I heard today that the governor of Florida was saying that it's going to be an easier route for the Haitians to go to Mexico and come up the border on our side.
Yeah, and that's been happening.
Yeah,
it's been happening for a long time.
A couple things. The other short things I got a nickname for Biden.
Oh,
I call
let me hear
B-Bow.
it. What is it?
I call him B-Bow. Stands for Ballas Biden, always late.
It's pretty good. If I can remember it, I'll throw it in there when I call him Joe El Baboso Biden. Nothing like making a good nickname for a funny politician when you're in talk radio. I appreciate the call. Big shout out to KLIF in Dallas, Texas. And let us continue. Let's go now to the center of the country, Akron, Ohio, WNIR, and check in with Peggy. Hi, Peggy. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Mr. Valdez with an S. It's very nice to speak to you.
The pleasure is mine, ma'am. Good evening.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Mr. Bohannon is just so thrilled with the way everything's going. I would like to know, because I understand that you have the answers to everything. I would very much like to know when the politicians are going to stop calling each other names and start telling us what they're going to do. And to be fair, I've noticed that even Trump has been doing it.
Yeah, that he's been using less name calling or more? More. Okay, yeah. Well, Peggy, first let me thank you for the incredible compliment that you paid to me. That I really appreciate that. It's quite an honor. And I think that Trump is a politician that's not quite a politician, right? I always say he's the first talk radio politician, right? If Rush Limbaugh were to become president, it would look like that first Trump administration where, you know, I think everybody in talk radio one time or another has a nickname for the politicians of, you know, of the time, of the day. And I think Trump is no different from that. It's part of his marketing mastery, if you will. So I think that's the case. Now, I think politics by nature, right, is the struggle for that balance of influence and power. And with that, whether it's in a very polished manner with the nicest suit possible and the stuffiest way you can do it, telling somebody that they're disingenuous or that they're, less than candid, or however you want to phrase it, or you call them, liar, liar, pants on fire, I think is a matter of style and substance. But the idea that you're calling someone a name remains true nonetheless. So I think that will always be part of our national discourse, this type of rhetoric. Perhaps in my generation, that's all I've seen. Perhaps in times past, we were more formal, and that's okay. I think there's a place for formality. I have a real deep appreciation for it. But I also have a deep appreciation for satire and for being succinct. And I think we live in a generation now where you don't really, I shouldn't say you, but many people don't turn on the television like they used to, right? There's a lot of people that get their news and information from online sources. And the reality of online is, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Truth Social or YouTube or whatever and what have you, rumble.com, these are relatively short opportunities to grab someone's attention and then hopefully hold that attention. So I think as we've gone to this new climate of media that has to be short, these sound bites need to be short and punchy. It used to be that way in cable news and in broadcast news, and it's even tighter now because now the TV is in your pocket and you just turn it on and you could watch whatever you want. You have, unlimited channels in many ways. So I feel that it's just a new way of doing what we've always done, and perhaps a more casual way of doing what we've always done. Now, with respect to the second part of your question, which is when are they going to, stop calling each other names and actually get things done? It's my belief that only a handful, I'm going to probably go with a number like 25%. And I hope that I'm wrong, but I feel like only 25% of politicians really give a damn and are really looking to make a difference. And it's lamentable that that's the fact, or at least that's how I see it. But that's what I see, and I feel like that's the reality. And as long as that's the reality, we're going to have problems because people are going to have disparate interests, right? They're looking out for themselves or their own special interest, as opposed to the greater good and what's good for their nation, their district, how they can put their constituents first. So ultimately, I think that's where we land on this, and it's a tough time in America, and I don't know that we come back from that particular time. I think we just have to get better at managing it, Peggy.
Wow, that's scary. 75%?
Yeah, that's my belief. 75% of politicians are useless. Because when you look around, look for a rock star in the Senate, right? Try and think of 10. Good luck. You're not going to find 10. I can't think of 10 conservative rock stars in the Senate. I can't even think of 10 radical leftists in the Senate. Everybody else is there to go along, to get along. Peggy, thank you for your call. Shout out to WNIR in Akron, Ohio. Folks, the music means I got to go, but I'm coming back. Don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, Rich Valdez here with you till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And I want to encourage everybody, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast of this program, I know some of you listen online in the car as you're coming home from work or going to work, and catch the rest of the show the next day on your podcast listening device. But I know some of you also just listen to the podcast, so I want to encourage you guys to leave a review. If you want to leave a 5-star review, that's always appreciated. And FYI, there are 2 podcasts, right? There's the podcast of what you hear on the radio, But there's also a separate commentary that I do called This is America with Rich Valdez. It's less than an hour. It's usually between a half hour and 45 minutes, and we do it weekly, and I encourage you to take a look at that. Usually doesn't have guests, but sometimes I'll recap a guest and highlight them there. But for the most part, it's my thoughts on some of the stuff I don't get to talk about on the air. So I encourage you to check that out, richvaldez.com. That's Rich Valdez with an S at the end, of course. And we're going to get to your calls, of course, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to go to Kirsten. She's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on KDKA. Kirsten, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. I just am calling to compliment you on the finest radio program I listen to.
My
Maybe
goodness.
It's because I agree with everything you say.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And I appreciate that. Do you listen every night?
Yes, until I go to sleep. So
Outstanding. I don't toot. Oh, thank you. I was going to say, I don't toot my horn that much. I probably should toot a little more. But on KDKA a couple of months back, maybe even last year, I don't know if it was that many months back, but we were the #1 show on KDKA, this late night program. So I thank listeners like you for making us #1 in the Pittsburgh market.
I just thank you for every opinion that you share with America, and hopefully it will start to sink into other people that you're right. You know?
Well, from your lips to God's ears. What do you think about 2024, Trump v. Biden? Do you think Biden makes it to the general election? If not, who replaces him and who wins?
Oh, dear Lord, I pray he doesn't make it. It scares me. I mean, I am so, well, it's not that I'm not like a mean person, but
no, I understand. You want someone competent to take the reins.
And somebody that has America's well-being at heart.
Yeah, amen to that. I couldn't have said it any better. Kristen in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on KDKA, thank you so much for your call and for your kind words. We continue. Let us go to, where did I want to go? I wanted to go to Larry. Larry is in, it says here, Newport, North Carolina, listening, Newport, North Carolina, on richvaldez.com. Larry, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, Rich, I appreciate your show. I'm so grateful that there's somebody young in the world that still got some common sense, and that's what Donald Trump's all about, common sense. And Peggy, I heard her call November 5th. The name calling is going to stop because when they stop attacking him, he will stop retaliating tenfold. He told everybody, don't attack me or you're going to get it tenfold. And he kept to that. So the attacks, Peggy, will stop November 5th because there'll be no more attacking. He's going to do okay. And but the main reason I digress on all that stuff. The main reason I called you because I heard Donald Trump is going to come to Madison Square Garden. And do you think you can get me a ticket?
So here's the thing. I've gotten this call and text from family and friends everywhere saying, hey, if there's a Trump rally going down in New York City, I want in. So I don't know how that's going to go down. I was originally alerted to this by someone very close within the campaign. They sent me a text message and they said, we're working on doing something in New York City. And they have a couple of locations that they're looking at. Obviously, the city doesn't like Trump. Trump has a golf course in the Bronx that they tried to take away from him, and then a judge ended up giving it back, saying, no, the Trump organization needs to run this because, A, they have a contract, and B, it was failing before they took over, and they made it profitable and run it better than any other organization that could run a city-owned golf course. It's called Trump Links. It's right by the Throgs Neck Bridge. So listen, if I have any ability to get tickets and maybe raffle a couple off or have listeners call in, I would love to do that. And Mr. President, I know that you listen and that some of your people listen. If you're listening tonight, you've got a lot of supporters that want to attend the rally in New York City. Definitely iconic. I can't wait to be a part of it if I'm able to be a part of it. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, whether it's Madison Square Garden, Yankee Stadium, or some other big venue in New York City, it would be iconic. It really, really would. It reminds me of Ronald Reagan kicking off his reelection campaign back in 1984. Right? It was 84, I believe. in Jersey City, New Jersey, with the Statue of Liberty as a backdrop. And he made a stop right after that in Union City, New Jersey, not far from where I had the first home I bought was in Union City, New Jersey. And I can tell you that I remember talking to some people who were at that rally, and they had pictures, and they were showing pictures of them with then Vice President Bush and other folks from that era, and just how they were reminiscing about it. So yeah, Larry, if I can, I will, for sure. Godspeed to you, my friend. Big shout out to you, and thanks for listening. Let me see. Do we continue? Do we have to take a break? We can continue. Very good. I love when we can continue. Let's go to Kalispell, Montana. Check in with Lance on KOFI. Lance, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Good evening, sir. First of all, a 6-star review to you for all the behind-the-scenes work and heavy lifting you do for the Great One, and 5-star review for what you do in your own time space. Something that I want to give you a cutting-edge intro to. We here in Montana have a very long, very unsecured border where there is literally hundreds of miles where you can drive right up to the border and walk across, and nobody's going to see you in the middle of the night. And with everything being focused on the southern border, I have acquaintances in the Border Patrol up here in Montana that have, how shall I say, without saying anything, have let known that so much resource is being diverted to the southern border that now one of the longest borders on the northern end is pretty much wide open. And I know of farmers and ranchers that call into our statewide talk show, Montana Talks, and have witnessed people literally just driving up to the border in van loads and walking across, and there's nothing anybody can or will do because there's nothing there.
Yeah, you know what, Lance, this is there's nothing that anybody could do at this point, right? Because Biden has made sure that he's neutered, in effect, he's totally neutered the Border Patrol at the southern border. There's not enough Border Patrol at the northern border. We've heard about this. I think the crossings are up tenfold at the northern border from last year. And that's a couple of months ago, that data that I read that. So this is by design, right? They're just finding the path of least resistance. And with a wide open border that is so busy down there that now you've got people flying in on the government's dime, right? Your dime, not the government's dime, your dime, my dime, the taxpayer dime. 300 and some odd, 320,000 that have come in on planes because it's too busy at the border. Just think about that. Or Patrick Bet-David, one of the minority owners of the Yankees, the New York Yankees baseball team. He was online. I saw a video of him citing the statistic that there have been more illegal immigrants brought into the United States than there have been births in the same time frame. And blew me away that we are importing more humans than we're actually creating in our country. And that just goes to show you that something is afoot. I don't know what that something is, because I don't think we've ever seen an experiment of this magnitude. Right? I remember when Germany was overtaken by immigrants from all over at the UN's behest, and all sorts of things happened. Like rapes shot up. Apparently there was, and you can fact check me on this if you like, but I was shocked when I learned this. There was some folks coming in from northern Africa, I believe it was northern Africa or the coast of Africa, and they were migrating into Germany. Not illegally, legally, as part of a refugee resettlement program. But there was so many cultural differences, and in sub-Saharan Africa, there was, potentially is, a massive problem with AIDS. And some people believed that if you had relations with a virgin, then you could be cured from AIDS. And this was spreading. So many of them obviously were now raping younger girls because they thought they might be virgins. And this custom kind of translated into their time in Germany. And you can read up about this, that rapes and all sorts of other violence, including knife attacks, shot up. Matter of fact, 60 Minutes, Germany did a report once. And while they were doing the report, on crime in, I think it was in Germany. A gang came behind them and tried to rob the camera from the cameraman. And that's on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's still on YouTube. So my point is, that's what we saw when Germany did this. Just imagine what we're going to go through with the numbers and the sheer magnitude of the amount of people that we're bringing in. This is something we've never seen. It's epic proportion, Lance. I want to thank you for your call. Big shout out to Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back. Rich Valdez, happy to be with you. And what is a Open Phone America segment without Gil in Manila, Philippines? The OG on this program. Gil, welcome, sir.
Good evening, Rich. Can you hear me okay? This is a new phone.
Yeah, you sound a little distant. Just talk loud.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to talk about is two things. First of all, you made a statement the last time. I never served in combat in Vietnam. I was not like Jim Bohannon, although we were in the Army and did similar jobs at the same time. But I wanted to talk about RFK Jr. Do you know that he was kind of a pioneer in talk radio? He was involved in something called Air America Radio about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know it well.
That was
just to tell you, so just to give you a little background, they took over a signal. Again, I'm a New Yorker, so they took over. They launched Air America out of New York, and the station in New York was WLIB for liberal, and it was, I believe, 1590. And they went belly up, and then they took 1600 on the AM dial. They got some other investors to bail them out. And then eventually it didn't work out. But I used to listen to him all the time, not because I was a fan or I enjoyed it, but I thought he was so off his rocker insane with the things that he would say. And I was also, quite frankly, and I'll probably take heat for this, but I used to think he has such a raspy voice. How did he get a gig in radio? And because I didn't know he was RFK. I never knew the name of this guy. I just knew this guy was always yelling. He's always angry. And then one day I heard it was the Robert F. Kennedy show. And I said, oh, my God, he's RFK, Gil.
Yeah, he was on Saturdays. He was on once a week.
Yeah, Saturdays in the afternoons.
Anchor person. Yeah, the anchor person was Al Franken. And Al Franken was really
another
funny.
One. Yeah, he went from Saturday Night Live to the United States Senate, and then he got bounced out of there.
Yeah, he got Me Too'd by the women in the Senate and resigned. Yeah. But anyhow, that's all I had to say. My health seems to be getting better, and maybe we'll be seeing you about October. That's the plan now.
October, that might be right in time for the Trump rally in New York City, Gil. Are you excited?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited.
I can tell. Gil, what I'm taking bets here. What do you think is the the outcome of this Democrat primary, since you brought up RFK? Do you think he, as an independent, does he make some inroads? Does he take away from Trump? And do you think that, or does he take away from Biden? And also, second part two of that question, do you think that Biden actually makes it to the finish line, or does he bail out at the convention?
Well, as you analyze things, I think for every vote he takes away from Trump, he probably takes 3 away from Biden. Yeah. So just because they're both Democrats, that's a third party from before. So I think he's helping our cause, but he's a little crazy, I think. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. Gil in Manila, Philippines, one of the originals on this program. Thank you, Gil. Godspeed to you, sir. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, we wrap up another week of America at Night here, and I want to offer my thoughts, my prayers to everybody that is in Indiana and Ohio that was hit with this tornado. It was a tornado, right? That was just brutal, killing 3 and injuring dozens of people. And before we go, with a minute and a half to go, I want to go to David, San Francisco, California. David, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Well, thanks, Rich. And yeah, I agree. That was the purpose for my call tonight, was to, remember that they're going to need some aid. But what's even worse is the tornado alley that used to be in Oklahoma and North Texas and Kansas, like 100 years ago in The Wizard of Oz. It's now been moved to the lower Mississippi and then the Ohio River Valley. So they can expect these tornadoes now for the next, planting trees is the solution. And we've got a springtime coming toward us. It's apparently heating up early. So I would urge listeners in the Ohio River Valley and, lower Mississippi, plant trees.
Well, you know what, David? I love trees, palm trees in particular. And anytime people plant a tree, I think that's a good idea. A couple of years back, surrounding like my backyard, I planted, I don't know, not me, my brother actually did it, but he's terrific. And it was, 30 trees, and it's made such a difference in the yard. So I agree with you. Love trees, love some greenery, and I appreciate your call, David. Godspeed to you. And folks, I want to thank you. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, America, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez. I'll be back with you guys on Monday. Thanks for another great week of shows. Looking forward to chatting with you again. Don't go anywhere. There's another show coming right behind me.